Hi everyone and welcome to another video. This time you may have seen from the thumbnail, but I am going to be doing a vlog in order to read some of the Penguin Green Idea books that I own. Now, great, that's a complicated word. It's not. Initially, yes. Initially I was going to read the 4 Penguin Green Idea books that I have, but as it turns out, it's taking me a little bit longer to read them, and I have more to say about them than I thought I was going to. So, in this vlog, I am going to be reading the first 2 books that I have chosen. So, those 2 are these 2. We have Tim Flannery, A Warning from the Golden Toad. This is I hope it's going to give me an idea of all changes that have happened in the world, well, most of the changes that have happened in the world due to the influence of man and the climate crisis. So I think this is going to be a good start to see like, oh, this is where the word's at and this is what's been causing it. And then I'm going to be reading Hot Money by Naomi Klein, which is about capitalism, which I think is going to be an interesting, it's more of a systemic thing that we have going on and how that influences the climate crisis and everything that we've been doing. Now, in between reading those books, because they are about nature, because they're about sustainability, because they are about the climate, I am going to be showing some shots of some bike rides that I have done. And the weather's been changing the last couple of weeks, so we've been going from end of summer to transitioning into autumn, so there's been some rain, which you will also see in some of the shots. I'm going to be reading those books, and I'll check in with you every time that I have read them. So I finished yesterday A Warning from the Golden Toad by Tim Flannery. Now, what I didn't know going into this one when I started it is that it's snippets from a book that he's written called The Weather Makers, which was published in 2005. So some of the information in this little book is already a little bit outdated, and I noticed that in some places, but overall it did give me the overview of the world and of different things that have been happening in the world, in nature, because of climate change. So that was a very good starting point. And he started a lot earlier than what I thought. So in my head, the climate crisis, we've only been aware of it for the past 40 years. So maybe since 1980. But what this book has taught me is that things have been going on for a lot longer than that, and that the first animal that has become extinct because of the climate crisis, the golden toad, has already disappeared in 1976. So that showed me that we've been aware of this for longer than I thought that we were aware of it. Another thing that this book has taught me is that the climate changing because of humans has also been going on for longer than I thought, because a lot of the climate crisis is due to the CO2 emissions, and that has started to increase since the Industrial Revolution, so the 1800s. But humans have become a little plague for the world for a lot longer than that. And us cutting so many trees and being concentrated in certain areas has been going on for already thousands of years. So we see already in nature that our impact has been bigger than that, and that already 2,000 years ago there was more CO2 in the air because of the stuff that humans were doing. So that was vastly interesting and shows how, no, it's 2,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago apparently, we could also already see that the concentration of CO2 was changing because of humans, but that because it started happening 8,000 years ago, the sum of all of what we've done, even though there were little things, amount to a lot right now. But the last 200 of years, we've been doing very big things that have had a lot more impact. So now the speed is just ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, and some of the elements are starting to influence one another and make one another go faster. So that's a lot of fun. I didn't necessarily like the last chapter, which was about the 3 tipping points. He talks about 3 things that if they happen, then stuff is going to start accelerating even more. So he talks about the Gulf Stream not functioning how it does now. The Gulf Stream is like the stream in the world's oceans that kind of reorganizes heat and cold. He makes the whole of the planet a lot more moderate than if the Gulf Stream wasn't there and the heat stayed where the heat was and the cold stayed where the cold was. So he talks about that. He talks about the rainforest of Amazonia not being there and the influence of that, and how stuff that we're doing is already accelerating things. So I learned about, for example, when plants take in CO2, their pores, their stomatas, something like that, are open, and that's when they sweat. But if there's more CO2 in the air, then those stomatas are going to be closed longer, therefore they will sweat less, therefore it will rain less, and that is going to have a lot other implications. So again, fun thing to see happening. And the last one is, I didn't know this one, it's these ice bubbles that are now trapped in the ocean that catch methane, and that if the ocean's temperature is going to become higher, then these methane bubbles are going to rise up, and what happens with that is that they plop, and if there is fire, then stuff starts burning, and there are trillions and trillions and trillions of cubic liters of those methane bubbles in the oceans. And apparently the last time that happened, 90% of the world got wiped out, and that is how dinosaurs started rising. So lots of fun stuff. But because this was written 15 years ago, I could see that some of the stuff was outdated, or that he talked about stuff that was going to happen in 2010 to 2020 that, as far as I know, has not happened. And that only goes to showing how the climate crisis is such a complex thing, and how a lot of these elements are influencing one another in ways that we cannot predict, but are definitely not going to be fun. So this was very interesting, a very good starting point for this little reading project of climate crisis reading. So I'm looking forward to stepping into Hot Money by Naomi Klein, because this one talks about capitalism, as I said in the previous clip. And I think capitalism is a thing, I mean, it's definitely something that we've created, invented as humans, and I'm looking forward to seeing the impact of that on nature. So I'll talk to you when I know more, when I finish this one. It's going to take me somewhat long, because even though these books are small and I thought, oh, maybe I can just read them in a couple of days, it's taken me a couple of days to read this one, because it's not that the information is super dense, but it is still a little bit dense, and I want to take away the information that is in it, because they've made these selections. So it's going to take me a couple of more days to read this one, but then I'll check it. See you in a sec. are 1 week further because it takes me a week to read this little thing. It was interesting. Hot Milk by Naomi Klein. So on the back it said capitalism, and somehow I had expected it to be more about money, but capitalism is about more than that. It's about how we prioritize money over the welfare of people and the welfare of nature, and how if we want to tackle the climate crisis, then we're going to have to deconstruct a lot of the ways our societies are built up. And our societies are now mostly built up on this idea of we need to be efficient. Costs are a driving force everywhere, and trade is important, blah, blah, blah. So we need to deconstruct that. And I kind of knew this, but she lays it out so clearly that it's now at the forefront of my mind that capitalism has very bad disadvantages. And at the beginning, what I also thought was interesting, what she shows in this very little book, so these are snippets of a bigger book that Naomi Klein wrote in 2014, which is called This Changes Everything. And at the beginning of the book, she kind of looks at history and how during the same period that we started realizing that the climate crisis was going to be a thing, that we saw changes happening, and that the Kyoto Protocol and the big meeting that happened before that, was that in Brazil? In Rio, yeah. How we started to have big global meetings to talk about, wait, we need to do something about this. How at the same time, we also started organizing world trade organizations, and that while there were some people that said, those two don't go well together and you keep prioritizing the trade over the climate, and maybe that's a problem, that it still kept going, and things have just gone from bad to worse. And she talks about also with this deconstructing capitalism that it's important to look at who is benefiting from the capitalism, and therefore who is the bigger player in when it comes to climate crisis. That right now in how we measure the CO2 emissions, for example, we look at where a certain product is made, while that product is in fact made for the people that are using it in the West. So something will be constructed in Bangladesh by a company whose headquarters will be in the West, in some kind of what are they called, the paradises where you don't have to pay a lot of money. Those have a specific name. Yes, the safe havens, the tax havens. So the headquarters will be in a tax haven, like the Netherlands, and then the product will be made for someone in the West, but it is Bangladesh that is emitting CO2, and then can't use those CO2 taxes to something that will actually benefit people that live there. So a lot of very interesting things, and also a little bit of hope how it is possible but difficult if everybody sees this social change that is necessary, something that will benefit them, that then we have a chance. A lot of interesting little tidbits, very interesting book, a lot of thoughts also. I mean, it wasn't as if I agreed with everything that she said. There were a couple of points that I thought, yeah, but don't we have an example that also shows this and this? So interesting book, would definitely recommend. Incidentally, a friend of mine a couple of weeks before I started reading this sent me a message saying, hey, do you know a book that's about climate change and money and stuff like that? It's like, oh, I have no idea. And then I realized this book, and apparently she bought 4 copies to hand out as little gifts to people. That made me realize that this is indeed, or maybe not only this one, but also the other Penguin Great Ideas, because they are not very expensive. They are nice little gifts to give to people, maybe as an incentive to talk then about the climate crisis. So would recommend this one. It is a little bit Western based, a lot of examples from the US and of the UK to the lesser extent, but less of the whole world. But overall enjoyed this read. So having read Hot Money, that kind of concludes this vlog. Originally I thought I was going to read all 4 of the Penguin Green Idea books that I own in this vlog, but time-wise not a good idea. So to recap, I've read these two, Warning from a Golden Toad by Tim Flannery and Hot Money by Naomi Klein. And the other two that I own, if you've seen previous videos, you'll see, yes, I found them again, are There Is No Point of No Return by Arne Naess and The World We Once Lived In by Wangari Maathai. I'm going to be reading these in a separate vlog, which will allow me to probably talk a little bit more about the books and show you more of the surroundings where I live and nature changing and stuff like that. So you're going to be able to look forward to that. That is, if you enjoyed this vlog. Yeah, if you have, do you know about these Penguin Green Idea books? I'm really liking them. I'm tempted to, not right now, but at one point look into the other Penguin Green Idea books that there are and maybe purchasing some other ones. I think they're a great way to delve into these topics and get the highlights of certain ideas without having to read a 300-page book about it. It allows for being aware of more crossovers between these ideas because you spend less time with each idea, but therefore manage to link them more. So if you've read some that you would recommend, I need help because otherwise I'm going to be tempted to buy more of them. Also, I would like them to be a little bit color coordinated with these because never mind the color thing. If you have any recommendations for the Penguin Green Ideas, I would love to know. I'll see you in another video. Don't know yet what that is going to be. I'll just go with the flow as usual. Don't know yet either when I am going to read the next two Penguin Green Idea books that I own, so you will know when I know. Bye bye, see you in another video.
Ba-chum, ba-chum, chum.